Section 1. A Descent into Darkness. Exploring the enduring appeal of horror. Horror, both on screen and in literature, has an uncanny ability to captivate and terrify us. It's a genre that delves into our deepest fears, the ones that lurk in the shadows of our minds. We are drawn to the darkness, compelled to confront the unknown, even if it sends shivers down our spines. Horror stories, whether told through the flickering light of a film projector or the printed words on a page, offer a unique and unsettling form of entertainment. Why do we subject ourselves to such experiences? Perhaps it's the adrenaline rush, the quickening pulse as we find ourselves on the edge of our seats. Maybe it's the thrill of confronting our deepest fears in a controlled environment, knowing that the monsters on screen or in the pages of a book can't actually hurt us. Or maybe, just maybe, it's the unsettling realization that some of these fears hit a little too close to home, reflecting anxieties we harbor in our own lives. Horror, in its purest form, is a reflection of ourselves. It magnifies our anxieties, giving shape to the formless fears that haunt us in the darkness. It forces us to confront the unknown, to stare into the abyss and acknowledge the darkness that resides within us all. From the supernatural horrors that defy explanation to the psychological terrors that prey on our deepest insecurities, horror explores the full spectrum of human vulnerability. And it is within this vulnerability that we find a strange sense of connection. Horror has the power to unite us, to remind us that we are all united in our fear. In those moments of shared terror as we grip our seats or the pages of a book, we find common ground. We realize that we are not alone in our fears, that the things that scare us also connect us on a primal level. Section 2. From Gothic castles to suburban nightmares, the evolution of horror. The roots of horror run deep, stretching back centuries to ancient myths and folklore. From the grotesque creatures of Greek mythology to the vengeful spirits of Japanese folklore, humanity has always been fascinated by tales of the supernatural. These early stories served as cautionary tales, warning of the dangers that lurked in the unknown. The Gothic novel, with its brooding atmosphere and tales of supernatural horror, emerged in the 18th century, laying the groundwork for the modern horror genre. Think of the chilling atmosphere of Horace Walpole's The Castle of Otranto, or the psychological torment of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. These novels introduce themes of isolation, madness, and the macabre, elements that continue to resonate in contemporary horror. As the 20th century dawned, horror found a new home in the burgeoning medium of film. Early silent films like Nosferatu and The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari used stark visuals and unsettling imagery to convey horror, paving the way for the iconic monsters of Universal's horror era. Dracula, Frankenstein's monster, the Wolfman, these creatures became synonymous with horror. Their images burned into our collective consciousness. The latter half of the 20th century saw a shift towards more psychological horror, with films like Psycho and Rosemary's Baby exploring the horrors that lurk within the human psyche. This era also saw the rise of slasher films like Halloween and Friday the 13th, which tapped into our primal fears of violence and vulnerability. Section 3. The Craft of Fear. Techniques that send shivers down your spine. Horror, whether in film or literature, relies on a specific set of techniques to evoke fear and unease in the audience. These techniques are carefully crafted to manipulate our senses, playing on our deepest fears and anxieties. One of the most effective techniques is the use of suspense. By slowly building tension, creating an atmosphere of anticipation and dread, horror creators can keep the audience on the edge of their seats, wondering when the other shoe will drop. Another key element is atmosphere. The setting of a horror story can be just as important as the characters themselves. A crumbling Gothic mansion, a fog-shrouded forest, a seemingly idyllic suburb with a dark secret. These settings create a sense of unease and isolation, priming the audience for the horrors to come. Think of the oppressive atmosphere of the Overlook Hotel in The Shining, or the claustrophobic setting of the spaceship in Alien. Sound design is another crucial element in horror, from the discordant score that heightens tension to the sudden creak of a floorboard that makes you jump. Sound has the power to unsettle and disturb. Silence, too, can be used to great effect, creating a sense of anticipation and dread. The sudden absence of sound can be just as effective as a loud noise, leaving the audience on edge, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And then there's the element of surprise, the sudden shock that makes you jump out of your skin. Jump scares, while often criticized for being cheap thrills, can be effective when used sparingly. They provide a momentary jolt of adrenaline, a visceral reaction that taps into our primal fear of being startled. Section 4. Beyond the jump scares, the psychological power of horror. While jump scares and gore might provide momentary thrills, it's the psychological elements of horror that truly stay with us long after the credits have rolled or the book is closed. Psychological horror delves into the darkest corners of the human mind, exploring themes of madness, paranoia, and the fragility of sanity. This subgenre of horror often blurs the lines between reality and delusion, leaving the audience questioning what is real and what is a figment of the character's imagination. Think of the descent into madness in Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart, or the psychological torment of the protagonist in Charlotte Perkins Gilman's The Yellow Wallpaper. These stories explore the inner workings of the human mind, revealing the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface. They tap into our fear of losing control, of succumbing to the chaos that lies within. Body horror, another subgenre of horror, focuses on the grotesque transformation or violation of the human body. Films like The Fly and Videodrome explore the anxieties surrounding technology, disease, and the boundaries of the human form. This subgenre often taps into our primal fears of contagion and bodily autonomy, reminding us of the fragility of our physical selves. Ultimately, the most effective horror stories are often those that reflect our own anxieties and fears back at us. They tap into our deepest insecurities, forcing us to confront the things that we try to keep hidden in the shadows. And it is through this confrontation that horror can be cathartic, allowing us to confront our fears in a safe and controlled environment. Section 5. Reflections in the Abyss. Horror as a mirror to societal fears. Horror, beyond its ability to entertain and terrify, often serves as a reflection of societal fears and anxieties. The monsters and villains we see on screen or read about in books are often metaphors for the real-life fears that haunt us. They embody our anxieties about social issues, technological advancements, and the unknown future that lies ahead. The classic monster movies of the 1930s, for instance, reflected anxieties about immigration and the Great Depression. Frankenstein's monster, a creature cobbled together from disparate parts, symbolized the fear of the unknown and the anxieties of a rapidly changing world. Similarly, the zombie films of the 1960s and 1970s often served as allegories for social unrest and the fear of societal collapse. In more recent times, horror has tackled issues such as climate change, viral pandemics, and technological advancements. Films like The Day After Tomorrow and Contagion reflect our anxieties about the environment and the fragility of human existence in the face of global threats. The rise of artificial intelligence has also found its way into horror, with films like Ex Machina and Her exploring the potential consequences of our increasing reliance on technology. By reflecting our societal fears back at us, horror allows us to process these anxieties in a safe and controlled environment. It provides a platform for social commentary, using allegory and metaphor to address difficult and often uncomfortable truths. And in doing so, horror can be a powerful tool for understanding the complexities of the human condition. Section 6. The Enduring Legacy. Why horror continues to fascinate and terrify. Despite its often disturbing subject matter, horror continues to captivate and terrify audiences worldwide. There's something inherently fascinating about confronting our fears, about exploring the dark corners of the human psyche and the unknown realms of the supernatural. Horror offers a unique form of escapism, allowing us to step outside the mundane and confront the extraordinary, even if it's just for a few hours in a darkened theater or a few chapters in a book. The enduring appeal of horror lies in its ability to tap into our primal instincts, our fear of the unknown, and the things that go bump in the night. It's a genre that constantly reinvents itself, reflecting the changing anxieties and fears of each generation. From the Gothic novels of the 18th century, to the slasher films of the 1980s, to the elevated horror of today, the genre has consistently found new ways to scare and unsettle us. And as long as we continue to harbor fears and anxieties, horror will continue to thrive. It will continue to reflect our darkest fears back at us, forcing us to confront the things that we try to keep hidden in the shadows. And in doing so, it will continue to captivate, terrify, and perhaps even teach us a thing or two about ourselves and the world we live in.